History, they say, is written by the victors, a neat, sanitized tapestry woven to glorify the triumphant and condemn the vanquished with clear, unambiguous strokes. But what if the victors themselves were a tapestry of rot, their triumphs built upon foundations of depravity so profound, they tear at the very fabric of human understanding? What if the official narrative, the one whispered across millennia, merely scratched the surface of a horror far more intimate, more psychologically devastating? We stand today at the precipice of such a revelation, a descent into the mind of a man whose name became synonymous with tyranny. This is not the history you were taught. This is the other chapter. This is the unvarnished truth of Emperor Nero, a tale steeped in matricide, public degradations, and the twisted madness that set an empire ablaze. The Golden Boy, a scion of two of Rome's most illustrious families, Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, began his reign shrouded in the opulent promises of a new golden age. He was the product of relentless ambition, molded by his mother, Agrippina the Younger, a woman whose intelligence was matched only by her ruthlessness. From the tender age of 16, Nero sat upon the throne, seemingly under the wise counsel of figures like Seneca and Burrus. For a fleeting moment, Rome held its breath, hoping for a return to virtue, a reprieve from the excesses of his predecessor Claudius. Yet, beneath the veneer of youthful idealism, a darker current stirred. The subtle poison of absolute power began its slow, insidious work, gnawing at the edges of his humanity, whispering promises of unfettered will. The shadow of Agrippina, however, loomed large. Her machinations had placed him on the throne, her influence sought to maintain him there, and in doing so she became the first obstacle to his burgeoning, unchecked ego. What began as filial devotion curdled into bitter resentment. Agrippina's possessive nature, her constant interference in affairs of state, her very presence, became a suffocating weight. Nero, craving autonomy, yearning to shed the guiding hand that had crafted his rise, saw her not as a mother, but as a rival, a conspirator against his divine right. The palace, once a haven, transformed into a psychological battleground, each smile a potential threat, every conversation a veiled challenge. The air grew thick with unspoken animosity, a silence more menacing than any public quarrel. The decision, when it finally came, was cold, calculating, and born of a deeply disturbed mind. Agrippina had to be removed, permanently. Yet, direct confrontation was not Nero's style. He favored the insidious, the theatrical. Attempts were made to orchestrate her demise through a rigged ship, a spectacle designed to appear as an accident at sea. But fate, or perhaps Agrippina's own tenacity, intervened. She survived, swimming to shore, only to face the chilling reality of her son's intent. The final act was executed with brutal efficiency, a pretense of concern swiftly giving way to the cold steel of assassins. Her pleas, her last words, were met with an indifferent cruelty that forever severed Nero from the bounds of human empathy. Blood on the waters of the Bay of Baiae marked the point of no return. Nero was now truly unleashed, unbound by the last vestige of familial obligation or moral restraint. With Agrippina's ghost laid to rest, the floodgates of Nero's depravity burst open, transforming the imperial court into a theater of the grotesque. His appetites, once merely whispered about, became public spectacles of perversion and power. The world watched in bewildered horror as the emperor, the divine embodiment of Rome, descended into a macabre parody of human connection. Perhaps the most chilling manifestation of this spiraling madness was his infamous marriage to a young boy named Sporus. Following the suicide of his second wife Poppaea, Nero, in an act of staggering psychological violation, ordered Sporus to be castrated and then paraded him through the streets of Rome, dressed in the full regalia of an empress. This wasn't merely a private indulgence, it was a deliberate public obliteration of identity, a grotesque inversion of natural order, forcing Rome to witness the emasculation of not just an individual, but of societal norms themselves, all at the whim of their omnipotent ruler. The charade with Sporus was not an isolated incident. It was but one grim tableau in Nero's escalating drama of psychological torment. His marriages to castrated boys were a recurring, horrifying motif, a public declaration of his absolute dominion over bodies and souls. These were not unions of affection, but acts of ritualistic humiliation, performed with a chilling theatricality designed to shock, subdue, and ultimately break the spirit of any who dared to witness them. Imagine the terror. A boy, stripped of his manhood, forced into the garments of a woman, paraded as a bride to the emperor, compelled to participate in a grotesque mockery of sacred rites. The spectacle served as a constant, silent threat to every citizen of Rome. If the emperor could so utterly distort the very essence of personhood, what boundaries remain for anyone else? The air of Rome itself grew heavy with an unspoken dread, a suffocating atmosphere of unpredictable cruelty that infected every aspect of life. Then came the fire. The Great Fire of Rome, a catastrophe that began in July of 64 CE, consumed the city for 6 days and 7 nights, reducing vast swaths of it to smoldering ruins. While history debates the exact cause, rumor, a swift and merciless hunter, immediately pointed its finger at Nero. Tales circulated of him watching the inferno from a distance, perhaps even composing lyrical verses about the burning of Troy, seemingly unmoved by the suffering of his people. Whether he deliberately set the flames to clear space for his grandiose architectural visions, the Domus Aurea, a sprawling golden palace, or merely failed to act decisively, the perception of his culpability solidified. Rome lay in ashes, and the people, desperate for answers, for vengeance, found a convenient target in their increasingly unhinged emperor. In the wake of the devastating fire, as whispers of his guilt turned into a murmuring roar of discontent, Nero desperately sought a scapegoat. His choice, chilling in its arbitrary cruelty, fell upon a small, enigmatic sect that had begun to gain a quiet following within the city, the Christians. Their peculiar customs, their refusal to worship the Roman gods or the emperor, made them easy targets, outsiders in a society reeling from catastrophe. Nero unleashed a campaign of persecution of unparalleled savagery. Accused of arson and a host of other perceived offenses, Christians were subjected to horrific public deaths, not merely as punishment, but as entertainment. They were fed to wild beasts, impaled on stakes, and set ablaze to illuminate Nero's gardens, living torches in a macabre spectacle. The horror was not in the blood, but in the dehumanization, the systematic reduction of human beings to objects of imperial amusement, twisting pain into a performance for a deranged tyrant. The reign of terror, however, could not last. Even an emperor's madness has its limits against the combined weight of a weary populace and a disillusioned elite. Conspiracies simmered, revolts erupted in the provinces, and the loyalty of the Praetorian Guard began to waver. Nero, once the master of spectacle and arbitrary power, found himself increasingly isolated, his grand pronouncements met with growing indifference, then open defiance. The empire, which he had so casually tormented, now turned on him. Fleeing Rome in a desperate attempt to evade capture, he found himself cornered, abandoned, and facing an ignominious end. His final act, a hurried suicide, was a pathetic whimper compared to the grand, destructive crescendos of his life. "What an artist dies in me," he is said to have exclaimed, a final testament to a man whose greatest work was the performance of his own terrifying, twisted identity. Nero's story is a dark mirror, reflecting the most terrifying potentials of unchecked power, and the human psyche's capacity for profound darkness. It is a testament to the chilling truth that history is not always a narrative of progress, but often a chronicle of regression, a descent into the primal, the perverse. The 8th chapter exists to expose these uncomfortable truths, to peel back the layers of sanitized history, and reveal the raw, psychological horror that underpins so many grand narratives. Nero, the matricide, the pervert, the alleged arsonist, and the persecutor, serves as a stark reminder. The greatest monsters are not always mythical beasts, but often men, draped in purple, wielding absolute authority, and driven by a madness that burns brighter and longer than any city. This is the other chapter, and its lessons echo through eternity.